Speaking of which, NATO's latest expansion drive has hit a roadblock, and this time it's not Russia, it is one of their own. Turkey has refused to support Finland and Sweden's bid to join the NATO. Let me first give you some background. Finland and Sweden are both neutral countries. Until now, they had refused to join any military alliance, neither Russian nor Western. But Putin's war on Ukraine has changed that position. Both Finland and Sweden ended their neutrality. They are set to apply for NATO membership. Initially, the reaction was positive. The NATO chief promised a smooth and swift entry for both countries. Just one problem, though. To expand the NATO, every member state must agree. In other words, all 30 NATO allies must sign off on that decision. Which brings us to Turkey. The president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has refused to endorse this move. He says the Nordic states are harboring terrorists.
Scandinavian countries are guest houses for terrorist organizations. Members of PKK, DHPKC are hiding in Sweden and the Netherlands. They are even members of the parliament in some countries. At this point, it is not possible for us to take a positive view.
Who is Erdogan talking about? The Kurdistan Workers' Party or the PKK? Turkey has labeled them as a terror group, and Erdogan believes Sweden is harboring them. Now, just to be clear, Sweden does have a sizable Kurdish community. Some of them have even made it to the parliament. Having said that, not all of them are linked to the PKK. To win Erdogan over, Sweden and Finland are dispatching delegations to Turkey. But Erdogan says, do not bother.
Are they coming to convince us? Excuse me, but they should not tire themselves. First of all, we would not say yes to those who impose sanctions on Turkey to join NATO, because then NATO would cease to be a security organization and become a place where representatives of terrorist organizations are concentrated.
This is exactly what Erdogan was waiting for. NATO needs his approval to admit new members. In return, he could ask for anything. He could demand that all Western sanctions be lifted. He could seek NATO's help against the Kurds. He could ask for sophisticated Western weapons, even financial assistance. You see, Turkey is heading to the polls next year, and President Erdogan is badly placed. Inflation is at 70%. The currency lira is down 13.5%. So Erdogan needs a win. And what better than some concessions from the NATO? Chances are Erdogan will abandon his resistance gradually. The question is, what will it take? What is the West willing to offer him? One option is military assistance. US President Joe Biden has asked the Congress to approve a defense package for Turkey. Additionally, Erdogan wants US jets. He is eyeing a $6 billion deal for 40 F-16s. NATO's concessions will depend on multiple factors. The most important one is this: how crucial is the Nordic expansion? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? According to the West, yes. Admitting Sweden and Finland is worth all the risk.
We were very pleased to be joined by our friends Finland and Sweden. If they do apply to join NATO, the UK is strongly supportive of that.
It's an important part that there won't be an inter-between time, a grey zone, but that if these two countries are deciding to join, they can join very quickly.
Well, first let me say that the United States would support a NATO application by Finland and or Sweden should they choose to apply.
So how is Russia reacting to all of this? With caution. Vladimir Putin downplayed NATO's Nordic expansion, but at the same time, he had a warning. If NATO puts military assets near Russia's border, there will be a response.
As for NATO's expansion, including through inclusion of the new members of the alliance, Finland and Sweden, I want to inform you, dear colleagues, that Russia has no problem with these states. So in this regard, expansion by the addition of these countries poses no direct threat to us. But the expansion of military infrastructure into this territory would certainly provoke our response. What that response will be depends on what threats are created for us.
How ironic. Putin says he has no problem with Finland or Sweden. Turkey says no membership. For the West, a Nordic expansion is strategically important. For starters, Sweden and Finland are perfect candidates, vibrant democracies, rich populations, strong armies. They would strengthen NATO's northern flank. But this expansion is a double-edged sword. Putin specifically warned against more NATO presence at Russia's borders, and now the West is doing exactly that. Putin may downplay this decision by Sweden and Finland, but that is because he has no choice. Russian troops are bogged down in Ukraine. At this point, Russia cannot afford another invasion. But what about the future? Just think back to the 1990s and early 2000s. One by one, NATO admitted former Soviet states. Russia told them not to, but NATO did it anyway. During all of this, Russia was passive. They criticized it, but never launched military campaigns. In 2008, their patience ran out. Vladimir Putin won a decisive victory over Georgia. Again, in 2014, he launched a war in eastern Ukraine. So do you see the pattern here? Putin waits for the right time to strike. Right now, his army and economy are weak, but who knows what the future holds? Which is why NATO's open door policy is problematic and a constant irritant for the Kremlin. NATO expansionism has already triggered 3 wars, 1 in Georgia, 2 in Ukraine. The next one is avoidable if the West practices restraint. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.